Now we're going to talk about the decision to bid. I wanted to just go through a few factors that most construction companies are going to consider before actually bidding on a project. The first thing that we'll look at is just project type. Okay, this is very important because let's say, for instance, if you're a construction company that you don't do any, no specialization whatsoever in doing healthcare, or maybe it's doing hospitality, and then you decide to bid on that particular project. Well, just understand that you are going to be going against other probably construction companies that typically they do that, or they've done it in the past, or they have projects that they have on record that they can actually show the owner saying, yeah, we've done this type project before, or we have done similar projects. So just that competing factor of, saying that, you have experience in it or not. Remember, this is just like a job interview. At the end of the day, it really is a job interview, and you're just trying to get the job. So outside of that, the size and the estimate of the contract value becomes very important. How much volume of concrete is involved? I mean, there's a lot of different things that you would consider in knowing that do you have these various resources in place to do this particular project. Maybe that particular size of project is not where you need to be. Maybe you don't have the funding capacity to do this particular type project just yet. Project location becomes important. I already mentioned it in part 1. And I explained that if you are located, say, in Houston, and this project's located in California, maybe you don't have everything in place in order to actually bid on this particular project. Or maybe you do. Maybe you have something in place to help out. Maybe you have to do something where you have to do a joint venture with another construction company so that you can actually work with a local contractor that understand what's going on in that particular market. Who are the subcontractors you can contact? How are you going to be able to pull a few favors? Working with the city and fire marshals, things to that nature. It's really helpful if you know someone that's working locally and they understand that system setup. So project location becomes really a big thing. The other thing is just the quality of drawings and specifications. A lot of people say that, if you have poor quality drawings, it's a big warning sign as to what's about to come up in the future. You're probably going to have lots and lots of change orders or as to say RFIs, you'll have lots of changes. And just dealing with that headache in itself may not be worth bidding on this particular project. So, and especially if you know in the past that you've worked with this particular designer and you know the kind of quality of work that they put out, that in itself can just, give you a bad taste altogether. So just the quality of the drawings and specifications, it makes a big deal. It's a really big point on whether to bid or not. And then the owner and designer reputations. I mean, it's not just about you as a contractor. You may have a great reputation as a contractor. And if I were a contractor and I had a really good reputation, I would want to make sure that whoever I do business with, they have a really good reputation as well. So it's all about building that brand, and you always want to consider your brand overall and what you're producing and what people see. So all of that's of importance. And the other thing is that it could be specialized work. So maybe you're adding in certain acoustical features or something that's completely new and out of your scope of area, and you're like, I have no idea how to even go about doing this. Perhaps this is something that you should back away from and consider let somebody else bid on this project. And a big thing, like I said, is the importance of making sure that you're not going to lose money or that you're not going to have cost overruns. Okay. Anticipated construction problems. That is another thing to consider because many contractors, they tend to shy away from projects that they see will actually expose them to very difficult problems. So I would just say, just make sure that as you're doing your due diligence, that you're looking at all of the risk factors that are involved. If there are some environmental hazards, that are involved and oh, yeah, I want to back away from that, then, perhaps you should. There's any other foreseen problems, because there's a lot of things that are going to go on as far as problems that are unforeseen, but you want to keep those unforeseen problems to a minimum. And it's kind of like taking a risk. It really is. But there are some things that you can do in place to help out to reduce that risk, okay? Safety considerations are always of importance. Always consider when you're working downtown how, say, for instance, if someone were to drop something on someone and they're up high, do you have everything in place? Maybe you're just a company, you're just not ready for that scenario yet. So you're always considering the safety considerations for every single job that you bid on. The need for the work, and also, as I said later, funding capacity. One thing that's very important to realize is that it's great to have projects on the books, but you don't want to mismanage, and that's why you've learned about the business side in construction, is the importance of understanding how to manage your business. You can have too much on the books and you don't have enough manpower or equipment or various resources in place, and that's going to put you in a bind. And so then the quality of your work is then going to go down. You're not going to be as productive, and overall, that's not going to build the type of brand that you want as a company, and it will definitely make your reputation go down in the industry. So you always really want to be careful on the amount of projects that you have on hand. Now, the other side of that is the funding capacity, okay? Typically, you're going to have a certain amount for a funding capacity, a limit, because it is basically a line of credit when you get funded. And most of these projects, they're going to have where you're going to have some sort of funding capacity. If you don't have that funding capacity in place, then you're not going to be able to bid on a project anyway. But it wouldn't make sense for you to use up all of your funds and then you don't have anything to back up on if you run into problems on down the road. So these are all the things that you really, really have to consider when you're deciding to bid on a project or not. Now, once you do begin to start getting into this process, you'll see that typically outside of just the building component of construction, you can also do a schedule for yourself in the estimating process. So, you maybe do this in Excel, or it could be done in Microsoft Project or whatever kind of scheduling software that you have. But this is just showing you an overview of how long it's going to take to put this estimate together. Typically, it can take anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks to put an estimate together. And that comes along with varying factors, I guess to say, that would go along with that. So the other thing to consider is the fact that you may actually have 2 or 3 other projects that you're estimating on at the same time. So it's not an unusual thing to be working on 3 to 5 different other projects where you're doing an estimate on. And you might put that in your schedule as well so that you can manage your time as an estimator. Then we have the bid records and bid documents. This is basically just an example of commonly recorded in your files. And you always want to document everything. You're going to have historical records of previous projects that you've worked on. And this is great because, if you want to refer back to that information, you can do that. And it can give you some indication of, this is how much we pretty much spent on that project. So probably be around that ballpark figure as well. And then you would also look at any other specialty type of items to consider, okay? Obtaining bid documents. Once you do decide to go forward with everything, usually you're going to get 2 complete sets of bid documents that are usually requested. You'll have bid documents for the estimate side, and then also you're going to have enough for your subcontractor takeoff as well. And then usually the designer usually require what's called a cash or certified check deposit. from contractors who actually obtain bid documents, and the sum amounting to as much as several $100 on a larger projects, or it could be a little bit less. Usually reimbursement does happen upon return, but if, say for instance, you were to do something where, you know, there were a lot of issues and you didn't do what you were supposed to, you may not get your money back. So you do want to make sure that you follow through with everything that you need to in order to get your full reimbursement back. And then there is the review bid documents. When you review bid documents, one of the big things that I think is probably the most important is just the importance of the scope of work, okay? With bid documents, they're reviewed after listed on bid reports. You obtain the information for completion. You highlight the needed data. You highlight anything that's unusual. You're going to check for any kind of missed type of items. And like I said, some of these issues may be really, really bad. So I wanted to talk to you about, you know, what happens if you find a lot of issues and a lot of problems as you're reviewing these documents. So as I said, it's very important is to making sure that you look at the scope of work. Poor scope definition at the budget estimate stage and a loss of control of project scope rank as really one of the most frequent contributing factors to cost overruns. So you have to get this up front and making sure that you've read every line, every detail, you haven't missed anything, and that's so important. Some of the areas of concentration, though, at the very beginning stage that you would typically look at would be earthwork, concrete, carpentry trades, and then of course you're going to look on the front end of your specifications, such as clauses in the contract that really might impact the overall cost of your work or payment for work done. So as an example, here, like say if the contract designates a 60-day payment period, this could really mean you need additional finance charges added to that overall estimate. So I wanted to go through this case study with you as an example on not really reading over the scopes of work and defining everything that needs to be required for a project. Here we have a contractor that's one of the biggest international contracting companies. And they really undertake all kinds of civil engineering type of work. There was really a project they were awarded, but after the award, they found out there were many discrepancies. So they received this one description. It says supply, install, connect, test, and commission fire-resistant modular cable system with connection plug, socket, and spur cable assembly to IP67 for luminaire connections as per specification. Now, the BOQ, which is your bill of quantities, and that's just basically a document used in tendering in the construction industry. It supplies in which materials, parts, and the labor are really like just itemized. But in this case scenario, the main contractor's estimation department didn't review the whole description of the bill of quantities, okay? So what happened? Basically, the first thing that happened is they forgot to add the major part of this activity connection in their cost estimate in order to quote an actual rate. And then the other thing is the resources that were available. The contractor was basically specialized as a civil engineering with civil engineering projects. There's really a possibility that their estimation department were really not fully acquainted about MEP scopes of work. So that's what I mean by it's very important for you to understand the scopes of work that you're about to get yourself involved with, because if you don't have all of those things in place, then you're going to really struggle with being a responsive bidder. And now, as an end result, it didn't turn out well, and but for the most part, the total price quoted for the works was in the millions. And so when the works of the cable connected, when the works of the cables commenced and the contractor tried to hire a specialized subcontractor, they ended up finding out that the price is going to be entirely too much. At the end of the day, they really did lose a lot of money, a significant loss. And when you get in those type of situations, especially if you're not a really big company and you undertake a project that's too much for you or it's not within your scopes of work, but you've committed to it because remember you have a contract, and so you have to do the work. And then, of course, with the bonds that you have in place, and you have a performance bond in place. I mean, this is saying that you're going to perform and then you're going to do the work. So in this case scenario, they were not equipped or ready to do this, and they lost a lot of money. I mean, this is just one example, but if they would have done proper planning, what could have been done to really solve this issue? One of the things is that a more prudent approach would be for a concerned estimator should have been able to contact a specialized MEP subcontractor to get a proper opinion before actually putting in the quote. And if they would have done that, they would have seen, oh, maybe this is something that we really can't take on. But that wasn't the case. The other thing is just they really just could have took the time to review the scopes of work in detail. So when you get these really thick project manuals, yes, you do need to read through them. You don't need to skim through them. You need to read through them, okay? Just remember I said that. The other thing is just the query list. This is basically a compiled list of questions. As an architect, I will personally tell you, and even myself working in that line of work, as an architect, you're really busy. You have tons of projects that are going on. So the last thing that I want is to have a contractor constantly calling me about every little single problem that they see. So what would be the better approach would be to compile every question that you have or every problem that you see, put that all on a list, and then give one single call and have a discussion over what these problems are. Now, you could do this through fax, email, and the reason why you want to do fax and email is to have a clear line of communication and documentation in place. That way, there's no disagreement about what was said or who said or she said this. It's all either on paper or it's in email and it's documented. So that really does avoid a lot of disputes. Now, once we kind of get past that stage, we're looking at what's called an addenda. Here, if there are any kind of major issues, it's one thing to have minor problems, and that may be something that can be worked out in a more simplified fashion. But if there's something that's really significant, that's going to really affect everything, and it's a significant detail, they'll incorporate this into the written documents, and then they will distribute that information out to all of the bidders just to make sure that everybody knows of this addenda that's been added. So if there are some major changes that are made, then everybody can go and adjust their numbers as needed, okay? Now, we have the review of the drawings. The review of the drawings is the next big thing. But if you were to ask me and anybody else in the industry which one is the most important, it's always going to be referred to the project manual, not just the drawings, but the project manual, or to say the specifications. So once you get through reviewing most of your documented parts, those specifications, you'll begin reviewing your drawings. And some of the problems that you might find in the drawings would be various things that are called out. So if you don't look at the drawings and you just look at what's in your specifications, you might miss something. So it's always important to take a look at both in detail. I just listed some of the various things that you would need to be aware of, okay? And going forward, one of the really big things, a day or two or maybe a week before you actually send out this project for bid, you're going to want to sit down, and most people are going to take what's called, just a team approach. You're going to bring everybody to the table, and probably as an estimator, you have done your quantity takeoff, your cost estimates. You looked at the material and the labor, and you figured out all of the stuff. And then you're going to sit down and get a little bit of input. Just imagine yourself sitting at a table. You've done all the work, and then you're going to show and explain to others that are going to be a part of the team. This is the approach that I would like to take. And then what's great about it is kind of an open floor where everybody can talk and say, hey, that's a really good idea, but what if we go about it this way? We could save the owner a lot of money if we were to do this. Those are some great things that I think owners will take into consideration so that you can win a job, that you're really thinking about their best interest overall, not just your own interest. So bringing a team together is important. Usually that's going to include your chief estimator, superintendent, they're just whoever would be involved with that particular project that you think need to sit in on that meeting. The next thing would just be doing an overall site visit. You would think that this isn't a really big thing, but at the end of the day, it really is huge because you're looking at this specifications book and then you have the drawings, but it's nothing like actually going out to the site, walking around, getting a feel for the whole entire surrounding area and, just taking it all in. Thinking about once you've done all of your calculations and you've taken the time to really, really review this project, then you can begin to say, I didn't notice that this area could be a potential environmental problem. I didn't realize that this building was so close to this particular project. I didn't realize that, I may have a really big drainage issue over here in this area. I may have to do some dewatering in another location. There may be some issues with the soil conditions. So there's a lot of different things. One of the big things is undergrounds and having that in place. So there's a lot of things that you have to consider on projects. It could be a retaining wall that needs to be thought about and used. Maybe the owner didn't catch that, but you see it. So there's things that I think are very helpful when you go and you walk the site. And this right here is just basically something that you could take with you if you're on the job site or actually on that site, and you can write down notes to kind of help you out and bring that back to the table, help you out a little bit. Just the last few slides here is just overall the use of computers. Today, we live in this world of lots of technology, okay? And it's kind of hard to get around it, okay? Computers is just a part of us. And I'm going to say this. I think it's very important. Maybe that I'm old school, but I see a very importance of the hand-eye coordination and doing stuff by hand. I think that you catch and you remember and retain information a lot better when you do stuff by hand first and then transfer that information as a backup to check your work. And that's what I would consider to be the best approach to doing any kind of estimate. There's like tons of stuff that's out there right now that you could use. Plan Swift is a really big one, and it's what we'll be using in our class. Then there's also virtual takeoff, on center takeoff, Bluebeam. There's just tons and tons of estimating takeoff that you can actually use and utilize. Some of the other things though that you can use are fax machines, cellular telephones, email, internet. There are just so many things that are out there to assist us today to really make sure that we have an overall good estimate at the end of the day. So this is all that I wanted to talk to you about as far as bidding on projects, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about it in class. Thank you.